This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Deal maker in chief. Good afternoon. President Trump announcing a new trade pact with the Saudis today as he hosts the Crown Prince in the nation's capital for a second straight day. The controversial trip comes amid lingering questions about the prince's role in the murder of Washington Post reporter Jamal Khashoggi 7 years ago. The president's convinced the Crown Prince had nothing to do with it.
A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it.
The U.S. intelligence community says otherwise. The CIA concluded a few years ago that the Crown Prince signed off on that hit job. Dr. Kanti Ahmed with the Council on Foreign Relations says that controversy aside, this business venture between the U.S. and the Saudis is a big deal.
This relationship is critical for both countries, but also for the region. The Crown Prince represents not only 35 million Saudis, but over 2 billion Muslims worldwide.
The Kennedy Center in Washington playing host to today's investment forum. Industry leaders from Chevron, Cisco, and Pfizer are all there. The Saudis will fund infrastructure projects and AI investments totaling $1 trillion. President Trump says he will sign legislation to green light the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. House Speaker Mike Johnson wonders about the timing of all this.
Democrats had every one of the Epstein files in their possession for the 4 long years of the Biden administration. And not a single one of the people who are so loud and animated right now, they never said anything about it for all those 4 years. So it's fair for the American people to ask the question, why now? Why suddenly are they so interested in the Jeffrey Epstein matter?
After the president signs the bill, the DOJ will have 30 days to release the files. Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie, interviewed by CBS News.
Are you concerned that the president may not release everything, even if this is signed into law?
Well, it's not up to him. The FBI director, the DOJ, Pam Bondi, they would be criminally liable. This is why we climbed the steep hill, which is to get the bill passed in the House, the Senate, and to present it to the president for his signature so that it would have the force of law.
Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in jail in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. The White House wants the FBI to revisit the attempted assassination of President Trump in Pennsylvania 2 summers ago. There are new questions about the background of the 20-year-old gunman, Thomas Crooks. Presidential spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt says the FBI never shared a trove of digital footprints left behind by Crooks.
Those questions are definitely deserving of answers, and I understand why the public wants those answers, and I believe the president does too.
And so why don't we have them?
You know, it's a good question, and it's one I'd like to see the answer to.
Leavitt interviewed by Miranda Devine of the New York Post. Crooks was killed by Secret Service agents after shooting Trump in the ear during a rally in Butler in July of 2024. Breaking news from Ukraine today. At least 25 are dead in a Russian drone and missile attack. An apartment building in the western city of Ternopil was the target. Russia fired nearly 500 drones and 50 missiles at civilian populations. The White House is not ruling out sending U.S. troops into Venezuela. This as the U.S. continues to flex its military muscle in the Caribbean. Reporter Charlie D'Agata says it's intended to curtail narco-terrorist operations.
It's about as full frontal, full throttle as the U.S. military gets, and certainly on a scale that this particular region, what the military calls Southern Command, has not seen in decades.
The USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's most advanced aircraft carrier, now stationed within striking distance of Venezuela. There are roughly 15,000 American troops at sea and on land in Latin America. A new study published in the British health journal The Lancet concludes that ultra-processed foods are a major public health threat.
These Lancet studies combined data from a number of long-term studies looking at what are the health risks of ultra-processed foods. So we see an increased risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, depression, and even early death.
CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder. Still to come, Some on the Noon Report, a midweek edition. Toys to avoid this holiday season. Christmas tree safety tips and elder abuse in Pennsylvania.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, going for relatively uneventful weather for at least the next couple of days. I'll have forecast details coming up in 10.
All right, we'll see you then. Thank you, Kevin. Let's check the stories making news across New York and Pennsylvania. The largest private investment project in state history is a step closer to reality in central New York. Computer chip maker Micron won approval yesterday from Onondaga County to start clearing 800 acres of land so they can build their massive new facility. Micron hopes to begin construction of the site in the town of Clay next month. The project expected to result in over 50,000 new jobs. Pennsylvania Attorney General Dave Sunday has opened a new office devoted to elder abuse scams. It will focus on financial exploitation, deception, and theft of older residents.
We've heard about all the different varieties of scams targeting seniors, from romance scams, imposter scams. Those scams are as plentiful as they are absolutely devastating to the victims.
Sunday says staying one step in front of the bad guys is no easy task.
And unfortunately, as often as we can teach people to avoid scams, the bad guys come up with new scams just as fast.
He adds, while foreign actors are often involved in elder fraud, a lot of times it's people much closer to the victims that are engaged in this criminal enterprise.
Oftentimes, the bad actors are family members. Nearly 2/3 are relatives. In other cases, they may be caregivers. We're talking about guardians, conservators, or those designated as a power of attorney.
Sunday's office is already investigating over 30 cases of elder abuse. Pennsylvania has the 5th oldest population of any state in America. 1 in 4 residents there are over the age of 60. New York State is closing part of the Collins Correctional Facility in Erie County. It's due to a dwindling inmate population. State Senator Patrick Gallivan says shutting down prisons, though, won't fix what's wrong when it comes to the state of corrections in the state of New York.
We have chronic understaffing. We still have the HALT Act is still in place. It severely handicaps the tools that correction officers have. We're still facing the violence and the contraband issues that we've seen. So there's larger problems that closing prisons just isn't going to solve.
In addition to shuttering part of the Collins Correctional Facility, the state is shutting down entirely a prison in Franklin County. That closure is expected to impact about 300 corrections officers. The prison population in New York is down almost 54% from its high in 1999. New York Senate Minority Leader Rob Ort.
To have less people in jail, not because maybe they're committing less crimes, but because we've classified those crimes differently. We're not locking people up for crimes that we used to lock them up for in the past.
There are 42 state prisons still in operation in New York. Pennsylvania's working poor will see a new tax break next year. It's the biggest change to the state's tax system in over half a century. House Democrat Justin Fleming says it's about time we build up the lower class.
Stop punching down on working families. It ends now.
House Speaker Joanna McClinton says the working poor deserve a break.
People will judge you and say, well, why don't you have savings? Why don't you have a little extra? Well, the truth of the matter is when you're working paycheck to paycheck, there isn't any extra.
940,000 PA residents will share in the $193 million in savings. It's all part of the recently approved state budget. A new poll shows New York Governor Kathy Hochul with a commanding lead over GOP Congresswoman Elise Stefanik in the run-up to next year's midterms. The Siena survey has Hochul up 20 points, but that's 5 points less than a similar poll taken in September. Among independent voters, Hochul leads Stefanik by just 4 points. Finding a place to call home is becoming tougher to do in Pennsylvania. Democrats in the State House and Senate are proposing a bill that would decriminalize homelessness. The legislation requires municipalities to provide indoor shelter to those in need before fining someone for living on the street.
This is not a somewhere else problem. This is a central PA problem. And I think that we have to ask ourselves, do we want that money to be spent incarcerating people, or do we want that money to be spent bringing our neighbors home, building safer communities and stronger connections.
Lancaster Democrat Izzy Smith-Wade-L. Homelessness is up more than 12% the past couple of years in the Commonwealth. Enrollment in New York's SUNY system is up for the third straight year. This fall, there was an almost 3% increase in student population at SUNY's 64 campuses statewide. Experts attribute the rise in enrollment to a new free community college program for older New Yorkers who pursue degrees in high-need fields. A bipartisan bill in the Pennsylvania Senate would require guardrails for AI chatbots. It's all in an effort to prevent teen suicide. Here's Family Life's Jeremy Miller.
Yeah, there are concerns about the effect AI technology has on mental health. A Senate bill co-sponsored by Senators Tracy Pennycook and Nick Miller aims to give communities the tools they need to keep young people safe online after a 16-year-old in Florida died by suicide after taking advice from an AI chatbot.
The chatbot did not provide help, warnings, or lifelines, but instead it amplified the teen's darkest thoughts.
Obviously, AI is here to stay, and we want Pennsylvania to be a leader in innovation, but we want to put guardrails that protect not just consumers as a whole, but most importantly, our children.
The bill was unanimously approved by the Senate's Communications and Technology Committee. Jeremy Miller, Family Life News.
Thank you, Jeremy. Recruitment flyers for the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, showed up this week on the campus of Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Similar flyers were recently discovered in other communities in western Pennsylvania. The New York Public Research Interest Group, or NYPIRG for short, is out with its yearly list of toys to avoid this Christmas shopping season. They hosted their annual Trouble in Toyland press event yesterday. The big focus this year is toys that utilize AI and how embedded chatbots could mine data on younger users.
They also are often connected to Wi-Fi, which means that they are vulnerable to being hacked, to where children can be contacted by people from outside of their household who can potentially groom them for more serious forms of child maltreatment.
That's NYSERG's Teresa Murray. She says every year in this country, there are at least 150,000 toy-related injuries and deaths among children ages 14 and under. A lot of us will be putting up Christmas trees in the next week or two. Northern Tier Christmas farmer John Mann tells WETM, it's important to get your evergreens in water and keep them watered, especially in those first few days.
When you give your tree water, give it hot water. And also the first few days are pretty critical because they'll drink like crazy for the first 2 or 3 days. And then after that, it'll slow down to almost nothing. But first 2 or 3 days, it can empty the stand of water in just one day. And then when the base of the tree gets sapped over, then it's not going to take water up. So you want to really keep an eye on the water for the first few days.
Man owns a Christmas tree farm in Gillett, PA. Pennsylvania, by the way, ranks 4th in the nation when it comes to Christmas tree production. Oregon is 1st, North Carolina 2nd, Michigan 3rd, New York is 8th on the list. Sports is next. We call it the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, we begin on the ice in Las Vegas, where the Golden Knights edged the New York Rangers 3-2. Rookie Braden Bowman scored his second career goal to give the Knights the victory. Johnny Brodzinski and Vincent Trocheck scored for New York. The other New York City hockey team fared better on that 3-2 score. The Islanders got goals from Bo Horvat, Callum Ritchie, and Kyle Palmieri. They held on to beat the Dallas Stars. It looked like Wyatt Johnson had tied the game at 3 with 1/100th of a second left, but the goal was not allowed due to goalie interference. Also skating to wins, the Maple Leafs, Red Wings, Lightning, Jets, Blackhawks, and Sharks. In the NBA, the Celtics climbed above 500 for the first time this season with a 113-99 victory over the Nets in Brooklyn. Jaylen Brown led all scorers with 29 points. LeBron James made his unprecedented 23rd season debut a success in Los Angeles. He scored 11 points and dished out 12 helpers. Luka Doncic scored 37 to lead the Lakers over the Jazz 140-126. Steph Curry knocked down 34 points, but it was not enough. The Magic beat the Warriors 121-113. Detroit over Atlanta 120-112. It was the Spurs by 10 over the Grizzlies 111-101, and the Suns topped the Trailblazers 127-110. Football. Good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. Yes, his wrist is fractured, but he apparently will not need surgery. And Rodgers, get this, he's pushing to play this Sunday in Chicago against the Bears. Head coach Mike Tomlin said they'll know more by the end of the week. That is a look at sports.
All right, thank you, Randy. Still to come, parental estrangement around the holidays, revisiting the attempted Trump assassination, and Cambridge Dictionary's word of the year.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Last month, the National Basketball Association was rocked by the arrest of players and coaches that resulted from an FBI probe into sports gambling. The charges range from mafia-linked poker games to rigging basketball games, and more indictments are expected. This month, 2 Major League Baseball pitchers were arrested in connection with a pitch rigging scheme also tied to sports betting. ESPN's Michael Wilbon was dismissive about the whole thing, saying, and I quote, "I don't care." But then, almost immediately after, he put his finger on why the problem is actually so serious. Quote, "At the highest levels of the pyramid in this country, of this culture, everybody's betting now." Well, sports has long been plagued by gambling scandals, but today, sports gambling has become so normalized, and it's pervasive across homes, high schools, locker rooms, all across the country. A recent video in the What Would You Say series discussed sports gambling and why it's such a big deal. Here's a clip.
The next time someone says, sports gambling is harmless fun, it shouldn't be regulated, remember these 3 things. First, sports gambling is addictive and destroys lives. Most modern sports gambling is done through smartphone-based apps. Studies show that gambling on apps is even harder to stop than casino or other forms of gambling and attract people to gamble who may have never otherwise tried it. Phone-based apps activate the same reward centers in the brain as drugs and alcohol and are always available in the user's pockets, ready and waiting every time a game is on. This increased access to betting has caused what one writer at The Atlantic described as a wave of financial and familial misery, which falls most on households least able to afford it. Sports gambling increases the likelihood that a family will go bankrupt by 25 to 30%. If it's true that the house always wins, more households than ever are losing. Second, sports gambling victimizes the innocent. Money problems and addiction are plagues on households, and sports gambling brings home the worst of both of these things. In the process, other social pathologies are made worse. Research has found that an unexpected loss for an NFL team now correlates with a 10% spike in male domestic abuse. Men who gamble on sports don't just lose money. They lose their self-restraint and hurt innocent victims. As one writer put, this booming industry's cost shouldn't be measured in only dollars and cents. It should be measured in human lives, especially women and children who are dragged against their will into this destructive and addictive behavior. Third, sports gambling corrupts sports. Just last year, tennis players, Olympic competitors, and NBA referees were all caught fixing games and matches. In 2023, the NFL suspended 5 players for gambling-related violations, and one analysis found a 250% year-over-year increase in suspicious basketball matches. This will only get worse as sports gambling invades more franchises and fan bases. This national experiment with sports gambling has failed, and it's time to end it. There's nothing harmless about playing with people's lives.
That was a video on sports gambling in the What Would You Say series. You can find the What Would You Say channel on YouTube to see the whole video and to share it with others. You can also find dozens of other helpful videos that answer all kinds of questions on difficult topics. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you. Outside we go, Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast. Our call for this afternoon, sun and clouds. High temperatures, mostly 40s tonight. Stars are out, patchy clouds, chilly, low temps, mid-20s to low 30s. Tomorrow, a fair amount of sunshine in New York, limited sun giving way to clouds in Pennsylvania, high temps 40s to near 50. And on Friday, mostly cloudy, a couple of late day nighttime showers and high temperatures near 50.
Okie doke. Thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price. Here's what's happening Wednesday, November 19th. The Epstein files will soon be public. Congress giving the go-ahead for the release of DOJ documents related to the late child trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. Correspondent Haley Jackson says once the president signs the bill, the DOJ will have 30 days to release the files.
This same bill Republican leaders once hoped to bury, now a signature away from becoming law after that surprising speed from Congress to greenlight this plan to force the release of the Epstein files. And the spotlight now on what's next.
Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in jail in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. It's another day of whining and dining. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, in D.C. for the first time in 7 years. It's also his first trip to the nation's capital since the CIA implicated him in the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Mr. Trump defending the Crown Prince at the White House yesterday.
Things happen, but he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
The president was confronting ABC News reporter Mary Bruce, whom he scolded and called a, quote, terrible reporter. The Crown Prince has denied any responsibility for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. The president and Crown Prince are attending a joint business venture today at the Kennedy Center in Washington. The White House wants the FBI to take another look at the attempted assassination of the president back in Pennsylvania 2 summers ago.
Caroline Levitt says new questions about the background of 20-year-old shooter Thomas Crooks are definitely deserving of answers. Levitt was commenting on a New York Post report which claims the FBI during congressional hearings never shared a trove of digital footprints that had been left behind by Crooks. Crooks was killed by Secret Service agents after firing on Trump during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania in July of 2024. I'm Mark Mayfield.
At least 25 people were killed in a Russian drone and missile strike overnight in western Ukraine. An apartment building in the city of Ternopil was the target. Russia fired nearly 500 drones and 50 missiles at civilian populations. Reports today indicate that the Trump administration is about to ramp up pressure big time on Venezuela.
Just in case the presence of America's biggest aircraft carrier off Venezuela's coast isn't sending a strong enough message to Venezuela's leader, President Trump is reportedly also ready to sic the CIA on him. The New York Times reports Trump has signed off on covert CIA operations inside Venezuela. Trump accusing President Maduro of enabling drug cartels and illegal immigration.
Correspondent Vicki Barker, students at Utah Valley University are divided over a planned memorial for Charlie Kirk.
Kirk was assassinated during a Turning Point USA event at UVU in September. The university has formed a committee to decide on a memorial, but the Student Association has voted to reject any memorial. Freshman Aiden Duenas says for some students it's a political issue, for others it's about trauma.
I've known people that don't even want to go in the courtyard because that's where everything happened.
Student Matthew Graves wants a memorial.
While it was traumatic, I think there should be something in place so that we remember what happened.
That report from Michael Wallace. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, has prevailed over a challenge to its business empire. A judge could have forced Meta to spin off Instagram and WhatsApp, but instead the judge says Meta does not hold a monopoly in social networking. This ruling comes 6 months after the end of an historic antitrust trial. NBA superstar LeBron James scored 11 points in his first professional basketball game of the season last night. He's been sidelined for weeks with sciatica.
It's been rough, mentally for me, since I started playing basketball at 9 years old. I've never missed the beginning of a basketball season.
The 40-year-old James is playing in his record 23rd NBA season. You're listening to the Noon Report, a midweek edition on Family Life.
Do you know people who have cut off their parents? Well, today on Family Life's Inside Out, we're going to talk about what's called parental estrangement, what it is, why people might build those barriers, and what to weigh in such a big decision, especially if you follow Jesus Christ. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and my guest today is Dr. Beth Clays, Counseling Director at Vancouver, Washington's New Heights Church. She's a Rochester, New York native and author of a Gospel Coalition article titled, Before You Cut Off Your Parents, 3 Principles to Consider. So, Beth, what is parental estrangement? What does it mean to cut off your parents. Why do you think we're hearing about this now more than ever?
It's interesting. I think there's a few things that stand out to me. One, I think we just have more language for cutting off relationships. I think of cancel culture, which is a little bit different than what we're talking about here, but has similar implications. And then I also think there is a greater sense of awareness of how our relationships with our parents affect us than maybe there used to be. And sometimes that can lead to people feeling like if I could just control this one relationship, it would fix the problems in my life. And maybe controlling this relationship means cutting it off.
Let's just stop here for a moment and say, are there safety or other concerns that you see as a legitimate reason that a child might cut off contact with a parent?
I think that there's definitely a need for wisdom. In general, if someone listening is feeling like, well, my mom, her behavior towards me has been abusive, or my dad's behavior towards me has been abusive, I would just encourage you, get support, get wise counsel on how to proceed.
So, okay, in a nutshell, what biblical principles do you believe Christians should weigh if they are considering cutting off their parents?
Yeah, I think one of the things we can't ignore is that the Bible is clear that we are called to honor our parents. And this doesn't mean you always have to agree with your parent. This doesn't mean that you have to do everything as an adult that your parent wants you to do. But I think it does compel us to think, how can I be a blessing to my parents? Even if there are tensions in our relationships, what does it look like to honor and bless them? And I think, secondly, we have to think through forgiveness. The purpose of this article was not to suggest that parents haven't harmed children or hurt them, not talking about abuse, but just like interactions have been dysfunctional. But as believers, we're consistently pointed to how because Christ has forgiven us, we are called to live in forgiveness towards others. And, it doesn't mean it's easy. I love the definition of forgiveness that explains it as absorbing a debt that is owed to us.
I paused on that. I paused on that in your article. I was like, that really brings it home.
Yes, because sometimes I think we feel like, oh yeah, forgive, you wipe it clean. It's like, no, you still feel that, right? But when we remember the forgiveness we've been offered in Christ, it frees us to still live in relationship with people that have offended us. Thirdly, I think we need to be people who are willing to bear with others in love. If we're being fully honest, we all have problematic patterns of behavior in our life.
Sure.
And we all need people who aren't going to say, I'm not going to associate with you anymore. And I think this means considering what does it look like to live in relationship with someone who maybe you recognize there's some of those dysfunctional patterns. And maybe you need to establish different patterns of responses to those behavior, but that could be part of bearing with them in love, continuing to maintain contact.
It's the harder path, isn't it?
It is the harder path. And certainly I want to acknowledge that nothing that I am saying, I'm not suggesting that it's easy, but I think it's the way God calls us to live. And I do think that oftentimes God allows more blessing and fruit to come from the harder path in the long run. Not always, but often.
So Beth, with that in mind, do you have any parting words you'd want us to be considering when we're thinking about, if we're thinking about severing a relationship with a parent?
I would just encourage each of us, including myself, that, God uses difficult relationships in our lives for often good purposes to help us to grow to look more like Christ. And we don't need to continually get sucked into a dysfunctional communication pattern with your parents. But I think we can still acknowledge it is part of God's purposes for us to learn what it looks like to bless and honor our parents while responding differently to their problematic behaviors. God might be up to something in that. And so let's consider what that might look like.
All right, that's Christian counselor Beth Clays on this week's edition of Inside Out. Martha's entire conversation with her is available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or our website, familylife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We have a fairly serene weather scene upon us for at least a short term. No big storms or big ticket items are due. The next weather maker will be a weak front that will deliver a couple of showers later Friday night. The weekend shapes up decently, as does early next week. Things could go downhill in a hurry, though, during the long Thanksgiving weekend. Our call for this afternoon, sun and clouds. High temperatures, mostly 40s tonight. Stars are out, patchy clouds, chilly, low temps, mid-20s to low 30s. Tomorrow, a fair amount of sunshine in New York, limited sun giving way to clouds in Pennsylvania, high temps 40s to near 50. And on Friday, mostly cloudy, a couple of late-day nighttime showers and high temperatures near 50.
Okie doke. Thank you, Kevin. And finally at noon today, Cambridge Dictionary is out today with its 2025 Word of the Year, and that word is parasocial. The dictionary defines parasocial as a connection that somebody feels between themselves and a famous person they do not know, including fictional characters and artificial intelligence. The word's been around since 1956, but Cambridge says it became popular this year as a way to describe how Taylor Swift fans, or Swifties as they're known, felt about her engagement to NFL star Travis Kelce. Yeah, a lot of us felt that one, didn't we? Parasocial, Cambridge Dictionary's Word of the Year. And that's our world, the world we live in. Wednesday, November 19th. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.